Strategic Commercial Manager within our Commercial and Procurement Shared Service. So we provide commercial and procurement services to Aberdeen City Council, but also Aberdeen Shire Council and Highland Council. But today I am here with my ACC hat on. So I'm here today just to talk a little bit more around about the Employability Dynamic Purchasing System, or DPS as we most commonly refer to it. Just in case I'm aware we have potentially some people who've not been part of the DPS historically and may want to join, and also perhaps a little bit of a refresh for some of our providers who are already on it. So our dynamic purchasing system is a procurement mechanism, and essentially it was chosen to streamline how we procure the employability services, but also it's a procurement mechanism which does support us around having some flexibility and responsiveness to changing needs, which Angela touched upon. So the establishment of the DPS for employability was very much intended to support local employability procurement across the board, and also allow us that mechanism to work with the training providers, take on board the feedback, etc. So just in terms of our key points we're going to cover today. So I think, as I said, we'll have a bit of an overview around the employability DPS, including how to onboard to the DPS, the process for mini competitions, which allow us to conduct targeted procurement throughout the duration, what resources may be available to suppliers outside of this webinar, and also some of the next steps for engagement. And this section of today's session is really intended to help you all understand how to effectively participate within the context of the DPS. So I think it's been said the DPS was established in 2022. Doesn't really feel like that long ago, but it is indeed. So this was chosen, I guess, for flexibility, but also local focus. I think very important that we get the people within Aberdeen working with us in the context of the DPS. So the DPS itself is very much led by the employability team, with support from members of my team as required. And I'm just going to move on at that point. So yeah, I think I said it's led by the employability team with support from my team. Mentioned, that local focus, flexibility to respond to a changing landscape. The DPS is perpetually open to new entrants. So we can add training providers throughout the life of the agreement, which was one of the main drivers to selecting that. Collaboration opportunities, I think, was a really key element of selecting this to allow us to work with the training providers. And it's 5 years in length. And I guess the no obligation piece is, in terms of establishing a DPS, it doesn't place any obligation on the council or on any supplier actually bidding to become part of that DPS. That comes at the next stage when we talk about mini competition. So just in terms of moving on and how do you onboard to the DPS? So the DPS is operated in terms of the onboarding through Public Contracts Scotland Tender, PCST. There's a project code which you need to find the actual agreement on the system. As it was said, you'll be sent these slides, so you'll have a note of this project code. And as part of the onboarding, we ask that all bidders submit a single procurement document. So the single procurement document, or SPD, we like an acronym within the public sector procurement. So within the SPD, we include essential qualification criteria, and that covers things like financial standing, relevant experience, business structure, and it also contains some mandatory exclusion criteria as determined by the procurement legislation. So things like criminal convictions, etc. So any submissions received via PCST throughout the life of the dynamic purchasing system are reviewed by the team within 10 days, and applicants are then notified of their acceptance onto the DPS or otherwise. This assures a transparent approach for joining the framework. Okay, just going to move us on. So onboarding is one thing. Once we have people, training providers on the DPS, throughout the life of that DPS, we will do what we call mini competitions, and this is letting our actual contract requirements under the DPS. So we use the mini competitions to procure the services for specific requirements within the DPS. We will, in the main, be looking for bidders to tell us how they will meet outcomes for us through the unique offerings that their own business can provide. So what I mean by that is we will tell you what we're looking for in terms of the specification, but we don't provide overly prescriptive specifications, as at this point the team are really looking for some service provider input around how those services will be delivered. At mini competition, the assessment differs from the assessment that's conducted to onboard people onto the SPD. The evaluation criteria at this point is very much based upon price and quality, and it's assessing the ability to deliver these actual contract requirements. So the SPD, in terms of the onboarding, is very much around capability and capacity. The award questionnaire, as part of the mini competition, that award criteria piece is very much about how are you going to deliver this specific contract. So the competitions are evaluated based on price and quality, and we would typically issue those, I think initially they were about 2 weeks, but we have extended that timeline more recently to around about 4 weeks, and they usually cover contracts for about 1 year, but we have built in extensions into some of those. Opportunities for mini-comp are advertised on Public Contracts Scotland. It uses the quick quote functionality and email alerts to those bidders who are within a particular lot in the DPS. And really from today, what we're keen to see in the context of the mini competitions is for the providers to take away, start to think about how to develop consortia in terms of the next lot of mini competitions that come out. And I think SDP are going to share a recording of a previous webinar just round about more of the practicalities and functionality of the systems in terms of how we operate the DPS for information. So hopefully that'll be a useful tool, and that links quite nicely, I think, to my next session around about resources. So I guess in terms of a webinar, we tend to talk quite a lot, and perhaps it's more, viewed as more theoretical as opposed to actually giving you the resource you need to interact with some of the practicalities of the procurement routes. So I guess obviously here today, so you're all aware of SDP, but they provide some fantastic resources, loads of webinars, there's online courses to support bidders in actually navigating some of the public procurement. So they're a really useful tool there. Supplier journey, so that's provided by Scottish Government, and that again provides guidance on the public sector procurement process. I've mentioned 2 systems today, so Public Contracts Scotland, mini competitions, Public Contracts Scotland tender, applications for the DPS. Both of those have a range of resources available in terms of guides, videos to support you in using the systems. Right, what's next? So as I said, looking ahead, the team really welcomes bids for both the DPS and any mini competitions. Strongly encourage the development of consortia bids. And as I said, lots of resources to support you, like the webinars and online courses from SDP. And we have another 2 years of the DPS, during which lessons learned will inform future procurement strategies, not just for the mini competitions we're going to run, but actually what do we do next from 2027 in terms of operation of that agreement. So really, we have a focus on continuous improvement and alignment with evolving employability service needs. I would like to thank you all very much for your time today, and please feel free to ask any questions in the chat and we can pick those up at the end. Thank you.